Carlos, what's going on?
What's up? What's up? Thank you for having
All
me.
right. Look, you guys are insanely busy, and there's about 10 things to talk about. But the first thing is Ocean's World, your new kids book. So let's start there.
I have
Why
it.
did you
I
guys
have it.
write this?
Hold on, I have it right here. I should
You
have it
have it.
right here.
Look at that. Look at that. I
Dude, I
love
can't
the way
believe it.
that I
We
love
had a
it.
memoir come out this summer, and I think I'm more proud of this one.
Well, what made you guys so you did the memoir, then you did the kids book. What made you guys wanna, to
Well,
write a kids book?
it was okay. This was a complete God thing. So I'm just gonna go back to the beginning. So Alexa and I get married. We're in our first year of marriage, and the first 5 years are the building years. So we're like, okay, cool. Well, clearly, not that we were having issues, but we were coming like across a lot of obstacles. It's like, wow, like what happened to our honeymoon stage? Like it's completely gone. So we start this document, and it was just titled like, "What's the point?" Because Alexa and I, we basically met and we started going to church together at the same time. So we were growing in our faith as we were growing in our relationship, which was a beautiful thing, and that's how it should be if that's possible. Like I highly recommend that. Uh, but we would get to these conflicts of like, well, I don't agree with you on this, and then she'd say, well, why? And I go, well, like, what's the point of X? And she's like, well, this is the point. I'm like, yeah, but why is that the point? So like, there was always this question of like, what's the point? So we start this document. What's the point? What's the point? What's the point? What's the point? We start writing everything. One of the biggest things that we dealt with before her and I got married was premarital sex. Like we were having sex, and I was like, well, I like the phrase that I used, and I apologize if it's terrible. I was like, it's like giving a baby or kid a lollipop, and he's halfway through the lollipop, and you're like, can't have it anymore. It's like, no, let him finish the lollipop. You already gave him half of it. You can't just take it away. And she felt otherwise. And you know, the deeper that we got into prayer, we ended up abstaining for like the last 4 months until we got married, and was then able to understand why we're not supposed to have sex before marriage. But that was one of our questions on there. So 2 or 3 years go by, and someone approaches us after Dancing with the Stars and goes, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about writing a book?" And we said, "Nah, I'm not writing a book, but I do have this one sheet of a bunch of questions. Maybe this is the book." And they were like, "Well, let's talk about it." So we ended up filling it out, like basically like making it a document, writing a bunch of stuff. And this person goes, "This would make a great book. I'll get back to you." Never heard from them again. Okay, cool. Moving on. Never pushed it. Whatever. Like it's fine. In the midst of all that, we have our first kid. As I'm watching Dora the Explorer, I'm like, I can do this better. I came up with Ocean's World, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna just put it on the back burner, and if I could ever use it one day, I will. So now jump to like 2 or 3 years later, we are on Maui now, and there's an author named Jefferson Bethke, who I'm sure you've
Yep.
you
Yep.
know
I've talked to him. Yep.
yeah. So Jefferson Bethke and his wife Alyssa, they're incredible people, amazing authors, great cooks too. They like welcome us with open arms. They help us, they let us stay at their house. We basically just become really close friends like real fast. And well, he's obviously got a publisher because he's written books. And out of nowhere, I'm talking like this is like 5-6 years from that first time that somebody was like, "Hey, do you want to write a book?" He connects us with his publisher out of nowhere because she saw a video that Alexa posted on Instagram talking about her eating disorder from back in the day. Wild. So I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll take a meeting. So we get on the call, and she's like, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about writing a book?" And I'm like, "I've been down this road. That person never got back to me.
I've heard this before,
I've
right?
heard before." And she goes, no, please talk to me. So we ended up signing with why am I blanking right here, HarperCollins Christian. And in the midst of all that, we were talking to them, and I said, "Hey, I have this idea for a kid's book. What do you think?" And they said, "We love authors who want to do multiple things. Let's give it a shot." And here we are with Ocean's World. So it's like,
I love it.
God, like we never pushed anything, and God totally just like put the right people in our lives. And just in case he's listening, I have to add one more person into this. Before I got connected with HarperCollins, there was a man in between those 6 years named Stan Jantz. Stan Jantz has written, I mean, so many books. He is like well known in this world. We got connected. So my best friend John connected me with Stan, and Stan took our document, gave us feedback. We went back and forth, and then the pandemic happened, so we all kind of just sat back. So it was like we had these three different people in our lives, and we never pushed, and we just said, hey, you know what, God, if a book is going to happen, it's going to happen on your time. And 1, 2, 3, 6 years later, here we have our book.
That's crazy. And all those connection points too, right? Like she saw that video, and just, it's cool how God does that. Like you have an idea and it might be 10 years later, it might be 5 years later, but it gets to come to fruition.
Yep.
You know, you said a lot of stuff though about your relationship that I think is so interesting. And look, the first 5 years of a marriage, for anybody who's watching who maybe is just getting married or you haven't gotten married yet and you're thinking about it, there are books called The First 5 Years for a reason. It's crazy. Everything happens during those first 5 years, right? And you guys, you were coming into this as celebrities with, you know, history too. Like that is a really difficult thing, I would imagine, coming into faith, coming into a marriage, and you guys are super solid. Like how have you grown from where you were then to where you are now, especially when it comes to things like picking roles and choosing what you're going to do, you know, outside of the book? I mean, you just explained the book was really something that you guys prayed through and waited for God on, but how does the rest of your career sort of square with that journey?
Wow. Well, Alexa and I, we, like I said, we started our relationship going to church together. So we got to grow together. A lot of people, either the husband, you know, is a believer and the wife isn't, or you know, vice versa, or they're both just kind of in it and you know, go to church to check the box off. Luckily, like it was such a blessing to be able to grow in our faith together. Now that doesn't mean that it was easy. We had so many obstacles and still so many obstacles along the way, but it's given us a real great boundary to have healthy conversations. A lot of my friends who are you know in relationships or married and don't have faith, like the type of conversations that I hear that they're having, I'm like, man, like you guys yelled at each other, like she threw what, what kind of stuff is going on? And again, listen, I'm Latino. I like talking with my hands. I don't raise my voice out of anger. It's just how I show my emotion. And I used to be that guy before I met Alexa, where like I would kind of just like raise my voice and get angry. And I met Lex, and from day one, she was like, I don't do that yelling thing. And I was so in love with her from the beginning that I was like, got it. No, like it's gone. And
You were done. That was it.
yeah. Well, and look, it's so cliche to say like you know like good conversations and like communication, but it's so true, dude. Communication. Alexa and I just went on our first solo trip without kids, without friends, without family in like 5-6 years since we had
Wow.
kids. And what's crazy is every time that we'd go on a trip before, like we love blessing people. So if like we're able to afford it, we'll bring a family member or a couple that could not afford this trip and bring them along. So it's like if we're going, you're coming too. We you know pay for the airfare, pay for their cruise, whatever it is. Everyone's coming. We're gonna enjoy it together. And I told Lex, I was like, we need to go away for a week where it's just us. We have no responsibility to anybody else. We need to hire someone to watch the kids who we can trust, and we can literally shut our phones off. And if there's an issue, they'll take them to the hospital. Like you and I need this time. And that was last week. And we went on a cruise together. It was 2 weeks ago. So long. So we go on this cruise together. And the first couple of days, obviously, I've got like PTSD. You know, I'm like, I like hear a kid screaming, and I'm like, oh, he's here. He's here. Like Ocean's here. Like you know, what's going on? It's freaking me out. But then midway through the trip, we get into this groove where like we're having these conversations, and I'm like, wow, like we haven't been able to just like totally like dive into each other, like emotionally, spiritually, like where nothing else mattered. And man, like that was the best week of my life thus far. Like I was with my
Wow.
best friend. We could pray together. We could walk around. Like we played cards, and we would sit there for hours and just talk. And I'm like, man, I think we miss that now. Like with like social media and phones and like all this crap out there, we miss that real communication where you can really talk to someone and really go, how do you feel? You know what? Here's the word: present. People don't want to be present anymore.
A hundred
Everybody
percent.
like I even catch myself, like I'll be on Zooms, like big long, conference Zooms, like 20 people, and I'm like doing other stuff. When I'm like, why can't I just focus on this one 30-minute conversation and just focus and give them my full attention? So I was able to give Alexa my full attention. She was able to give me her full attention, not worry about anything. And man, like we had one I don't want to call it a fight, but we had one argument the entire disagreement the entire trip, and it was so silly that after it all fizzled out, we sat there in the room and we started laughing, and I was like, man, when you can separate yourself and see it from 1,000 feet or 20,000 feet, as they say, or 30,000 feet, whatever, it's like it's really funny because it doesn't really matter, and you guys just argued for something that you could have solved in 2 seconds, but you let it get bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
really, like communication is everything, and I know it's
Well,
so cliche.
I wanted to say something about this because it's interesting what you're talking about there, because a lot of times when you're married and you have kids, the kids, obviously they take the prime spot. But when you sort of lose the marriage along the way, not that you're losing the marriage, but when it's only about the kids, they're not seeing that model of what a really good marriage looks like when you don't pour time into that, right? Like what you guys did was you poured time into each other. And I think that's actually healthy to prioritize at moments so that you can then be that model for the kids and they can actually see what that looks like. Does that make sense?
100%. We were burnt out. We were literally burnt out. We had just come off tour. We're finally in Florida. We're living on the boat. We're fixing the boat. We're this, we're that. And like Lex and I just said, what? Like, why are we getting at each other? Like, why we have no patience for our kids? It's like, what is going on? So yeah, absolutely. Mom and daddy got
Yeah.
to be healthy, so that the kids can see a good
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, good marriage, good relationship. See how, you treat each other. And obviously, like marriage is so important to God, being able to sort of show that. I fall into this trap too. My wife and I, we get so busy and it's like you're rushing around, you're struggling, you're trying to get things done. And it's like, that's all the kids see, right? Is you like rushing around trying to take care of them. And of course, that's part of it. But taking that time is a really healthy thing to do. I know we have never done it. And actually hearing you talk about it, I'm like, I have to do that. Like we need to take that time
Yeah.
to just be together, right? So I love that. I got to ask you about your journey though, because I know you met at a Bible study, you fell in love, you got married, you were on this journey. For you though, when was it? Like, did you grow up with faith at all? At what point did you start to sort of see the light bulb go off for you?
So I grew up Catholic. I did like the whole First Communion, whatever, all that stuff. But it never meant anything. It was just a box. And then when I moved to California, I I kind of I I didn't know, like I knew of God, but I didn't have a relationship. The girl that I was dating in college, she was like Southern Baptist, so I would go to her. I'd go to Mississippi. We would go to her church, and we would sing all the songs. And I was like, okay, cool, check that box, moving on. But it wasn't until I really hit rock bottom, and for me, my rock bottom, I always tell people, it's probably different from a lot of people's rock bottom, but I started getting into like not like hardcore drugs, but I was smoking a lot of weed, which I guess now is legal everywhere now. But I was smoking a lot of weed. I was drinking and I was sleeping around. And I most people are like, that sounds like a weekend for me. I'm like, well, for
Right.
me that was like that wasn't who I was, and I knew that it wasn't who I was. And then I did it for so long, for a whole summer, that I kind of just got like really depressed, and I locked myself in my house, and I was ordering food, and I was just miserable. And I knew that there was something more for me, and I ended up calling my best friend. So John and Andrew, if they're listening, you both are my best friend. But I called Andrew and I said, "Hey, man, I know that we don't really know each other, and that you just sold me a house he was my realtor. I said, but you always seem so happy. So why are you always so happy? Because I'm not happy right now. And he was like, oh man, I got Jesus. And I was like, okay, we're done. I hung up the phone. I was like, this is not like, I'm not playing this game. And a couple more days go by. I hit a even lower low, and I called him and I was like, I need whatever you have because this sucks. So he said, hey, listen, it's probably the last thing that you want to hear, but how about you come to church with me? So I said, fine, I'll go to church. So I go to church that Sunday. The bishop, it was this little tiny church in Inglewood, California. Like I was the whitest guy there. And literally like the music is going. I'm like, I can do this. I love music. This is happening. And the bishop comes up and he preaches this sermon and he's like, let me tell you a little story about a guy, myself, who was 23. And I'm like, well, I'm 23. And he's like, man, I was smoking drugs. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm smoking drugs too. He's like, I was sleeping around. I was like, me too. Oh my gosh. I'm drinking. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's speaking to me. He preaches this whole sermon literally directly into my soul. And after it finishes, I was just like, this is what I want. Like, I'm done with everything. Like, I'm on this Jesus high now, and I'm hugging everybody, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Take me. This is the best. And I went to lunch with his family, and I remember I said, listen, I don't even want to eat. I got to go make some phone calls. And I called every single person that I'd ever wronged in my life.
Wow.
Ones that I could remember. And I was like, hey, listen, so-and-so, I'm so sorry I did this. Hey, so-and-so, listen, I cheated on you in the 6th grade. I'm very sorry. Hey, so-and-so, like, I just called everybody. Like, it was ridiculous. And after that, I get in the car, and Andrew was like, hey, do you want to come to my Bible study on Thursday? And I was like, heck yeah, I do. And he called that day. He called this girl while we were in the car and invited her to the Bible study. And so he's, like he was just trying to get everybody to come. So I'm like, all right. Well, that night I go to the Bible study, and the girl that he called to come to the Bible study for her first time happened to be Alexa. And
the girl he called in the car, while you were there?
Yeah, was Alexa. But I didn't know. And then that night she showed up. I met Alexa, and I was like, all right, this is it for me.
Wow. So I didn't realize that time frame was so truncated of you going to church, having that experience. I knew you guys met at a Bible study, but it was right after that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So church on Sunday, Bible study on Thursday.
And then, the rest is history. Your lives completely changed.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because you've obviously done a lot in music in Hollywood and continue to. I'm going to ask the negative question first, then I'll ask the positive. What is the biggest struggle? And maybe you don't have one, I don't know, but I'm curious when it comes to your faith and your career.
Man, I always tell people that acting, singing, all this stuff, to me, producing, writing, it's a hobby, right? My job is to spread God's love to everyone, like to spread the good word. That's my job. Everything else is a hobby. So I think my biggest struggle is like I want to find the right projects or the right things to do, but it's really hard in this world right now to like do the things that I want to do because they're not cool or with it. So I think like my biggest struggle is like finding the right team who wants to make the content that I want to make. And that I think is my biggest struggle. And I'm not giving up, and I'm continuing to find the right people. And, I really do believe that God has a huge calling on mine and Alexa's life. And we're just going to continue just, powering through. But I think that'd be the biggest struggle is finding the right team.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, especially in light of who you guys are and what you stand for and what you're trying to do. All right. So the positive is, what is the blessing? What has been the biggest blessing of your career and of your fame?
Man, I'd say that I'm so blessed that I can still provide for my family and do the things that I know don't compromise what's the word I'm looking for? Morals, I guess, just I don't have to compromise values.
Right.
Values. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't have to compromise who I am. And I've been able to, like God has provided projects. I mean, with Hallmark and with Ocean's World. Like he's continuing, because again, like, look, I would love to be, the next Marvel superhero. I'm not saying I won't. I would love to be, and maybe one day it will happen. But in the interim, I still need to, be creating and like doing stuff, and like I've been able to do stuff like Big Time Rush, where I get to go and perform, and I'm not cursing and doing all this stuff, or getting naked and doing whatever. Sometimes I do get shirtless, but it's because it's just I give the fans what they want. So if one thing with shirt on, they put shirt on. But no, it's a blessing for anyone to get to do what they love and actually be able to provide for their family. So I am so grateful for that.
Well, I love that. And I appreciate you coming on today. I could take more of your time, and there's a lot more to talk about. So you got to come back another time.
We'll
but
do it again, man.
Yeah, we got to, because the book is Ocean's World, right? And that book is out wherever books are sold. Final quick question for you, because I know you wrote this obviously for a reason, and it's a touching book. What are you hoping parents and kids take away from it?
Man, we wanted to create, and we still want to create, children's content that has a kingdom heart. And I love Ocean's World because it's not just like this really cool, pretty picture book with a story, but there's a lot of fun facts, as we call them. So every page has different fun facts. So kids are learning, but it's not like forced learning. It's just fun learning. I mean, we literally live on a boat at the moment, and our kids, they're like, today we were out on top of the deck, like swinging in a hammock, and the conversations that we were having were just so great, and very different from being stuck in a hotel while I'm filming a movie. So like for me, like I want to get people's kids to just like go and explore, like heads and minds out of all these electronics, and just go out and explore. So the entire Ocean's World series is going to be about exploring and going out. We're like working on a second book right now, where the whole family gets on a catamaran and sails to South America, which is kind of like
awesome.
what we're doing here. And this vehicle that they will have now, they can go anywhere to South America. They can sail to Europe and go to France. They can.
It's like the Magic School Bus, but a boat.
Thank you. Yes. And ideally, ultimately, I would love to make this into a children's television series. So I hope people love it. I hope everyone gets a lot out of it. The response has been incredible. It's just so cool seeing all these parents with their kids at night reading, like they're reading our book to their kids.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so surreal. It's so surreal. So yeah.
I love that. Well, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
No, dude, thank you so much. And I definitely do it again, Billy.